Skol Vikings fans, we have two major updates hitting the roster today. A high draft pick quarterback might be cut after a rough preseason and losing his backup spot. And on top of that, a defensive legend is still weighing retirement after 14 seasons. I reveal both names shortly. Stick around, like, and subscribe as we push toward 2,000 followers for every update. Comment your city so I can see how far our reach goes. JJ. McCarthy could be facing a surprise roster cut or trade by the Minnesota Vikings before the Sunday deadline for the 53-man roster. As the 10th overall pick in his draft class, my expectations for him were rightfully high. Yet his preseason performance has left me genuinely concerned about his future in the land of 10,000 lakes. He struggled throughout the summer, completing less than 60% of his passes without finding the end zone once. To make matters worse, a sprained ankle sustained against the Baltimore Ravens only hampered his ability to prove his worth on the field. Now here's the thing. After losing the backup quarterback competition to Carson Wentz, the path forward looks incredibly thin. Analyst Trevor Ripley wrote that the door for his departure has fully opened, even suggesting that an outright release could happen if a trade market fails to materialize. Is this really the end for our first-round selection? Or is the front office just testing the waters? Honestly, I'm excited about the talent we hold in other rooms, but I also want to pump the brakes a little before we assume he is definitely gone. The reality is that McCarthy failed to find rhythm alongside Justin Jefferson, and Coach Kevin O'Connell clearly needed to see more consistency from the signal caller to justify his spot. While Ripley notes that trading him would be the ideal outcome, the lack of a market for a quarterback struggling to execute basic X's and O's makes a clean separation an uncomfortable but real possibility. Does the locker room dynamic make keeping him on the roster unsustainable at this point? I need to dig deeper into the actual cap hit and depth chart implications of keeping a struggling player over a veteran who provides more immediate special teams value. Could an organization truly justify cutting a top 10 pick before he even sees a single regular season snap? The optics are brutal, and frankly, my frustration matches the tension in the building right now. After watching the preseason tape, it is clear that accuracy issues haunted him. Completing less than 60% of his passes without finding the end zone reveals a glaring disconnect in the offensive scheme. And this is the part that gets me. Trevor Ripley noted that the market might simply not exist for a signal caller who struggled to find rhythm alongside Justin Jefferson and under Kevin O'Connell. We have seen first-round investments fizzle before, but a clean separation before the ink is even dry on the contract feels like an admission of a massive scouting error. Think about the locker room atmosphere right now. How do you maintain a healthy competitive culture when your 10th overall pick is essentially benched behind a veteran, potentially facing a release that could lead to awkward silence for everyone involved? The front office is likely staring at a sunk cost dilemma, weighing whether to swallow their pride or try to force a trade that the league clearly does not want. This is real, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because the financial cap hit is only one variable in this messy equation. Does holding onto a player who cannot execute basic assignments hurt the development of the rest of the depth chart? That is the question driving this nightmare for the management staff. Watching him suffer that sprained ankle against Baltimore felt like the final blow to his chances to salvage this preseason, leaving coach Kevin O'Connell with almost no choice but to reconsider the entire quarterback hierarchy before the final roster deadline approaches this weekend. Now let us pivot to an update involving a true pillar of this organization, as Harrison Smith at 37 remains locked in the difficult process of deciding whether to retire after 14 seasons. I know seeing him potentially hang up the cleats hits hard for those of us who have watched him terrorize opponents in the land of 10,000 lakes, but he has earned the right to take his time. Regardless of the outcome, he is already set for the Ring of Honor, which feels like the absolute least this franchise can do for him. The bottom line here is that while the organization clearly prefers a return for such a veteran presence, they seem prepared to navigate the future without his leadership if he chooses to move on. How do we feel about life after number 22? I am excited to see what the youth can do, but I also want to pump the brakes a little before we crown a successor. The current depth chart shows Josh Metellus ready to step up after his 86 tackles and 2 interceptions across 2023 and 2024. Then we have Theo Jackson, who showed flashes with 2 career picks, and Jay Ward, who really caught my eye with that massive hit on Jackson Dart. While Jacoby Thomas is currently limited by a back injury, undrafted rookie Jacob Thomas has been a standout performer during camp, even leading the team in tackles during the second preseason game. Is the talent in this room deep enough to withstand the loss of a legend? It is a massive question for the front office to answer as the roster deadline looms. We are watching a transition that is as much about respect for his storied career as it is about practical planning for the defensive secondary. Transitioning the defense away from such a long-standing veteran is an enormous challenge that demands a hard look at our current roster construction. While having a legend like Harrison Smith provides unmatched stability, his potential departure actually allows us to finally see what our younger defensive backs can do when forced into major snap counts. Think about the potential here, but honestly, can we afford to lose his veteran savvy during high-stakes games? My honest take here is that Josh Metellus has proven himself capable of handling more responsibility, especially after totaling 86 tackles over these past 2 seasons. What nobody is talking about is the quiet development of players like Theo Jackson, who already has 2 career picks against real talent like the Seahawks. Integrating Jay Ward alongside an undrafted rookie like Jacob Thomas might sound risky, but those guys are hungry to prove their value in the trenches and throughout our coverage units. Relying on youthful energy is a gamble, but the alternatives are becoming thin as our depth chart shifts toward the future. Jacoby Thomas faces an uphill climb while dealing with that back injury, which adds another layer of uncertainty to this specific position group. If we move on, we have to trust the scouts who prioritize these specific defensive assets over adding high-priced free agents. The way I see it, the front office is clearly comfortable with this transition, provided the younger group continues showing promise during these final camp days. Is it possible we are underestimating the collective impact of these developing players? Regardless of what he decides, his legacy is already etched in stone for this franchise, and I respect his timeline entirely, even if the uncertainty creates a massive headache for the coaching staff planning our defensive packages for September. When you put both of today's stories together, here's the picture that emerges for the Minnesota Vikings. This organization is clearly pivoting toward a fresh era of roster management. Watching a high-end draft pick like J.J. McCarthy face a potential exit while simultaneously waiting for a legend like Harrison Smith to confirm his future reveals a front office prioritizing cold efficiency over sentimental attachments. Let's be real. Having to choose between a struggling quarterback who failed to find his rhythm and a veteran deciding on his legacy creates a massive burden for our coaching staff. I think this transition shows our leadership team is willing to make tough, uncomfortable moves to ensure the depth chart remains competitive in the land of 10,000 lakes. Does the front office have the stomach to part ways with a first-round selection before he proves his worth? And would you actually feel comfortable if Harrison Smith decides to walk away after 14 stellar seasons? I really want to hear from you in the comments section, because these decisions will dictate how our defense handles the secondary and how our offense develops under Kevin O'Connell for years to come. I am excited to see if the younger group can step up, but I also want to pump the brakes a little before we assume success is guaranteed without our defensive leader on the field. If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. I'm still pushing toward our first 2,000 subscribers, and every one of you helps me get there. Vikings fans, I'll see you in the next one. I'll be back later to update you with the latest Minnesota Vikings news.